Hey guys, so I just reread the manga for Skypiea, and before I say anything else, I gotta say, very impressed with Skypiea on a reread. Even though on a reread, this is like my third or fourth time experiencing counting rereads and watching the anime, but I enjoyed it a lot more this time around. Just being a bit more critical and reading a bit more slowly, and kind of taking it all in. Um, and I think it's a much better arc than the community gives it credit for. I mean, from what I've seen, the general consensus in the community is that it's kind of a mid arc. Not well, maybe not mid. It's the best. Maybe mid is not the best word. It's good. Maybe better than average, but it's nothing like it's no Marine for no Enies Lobby, and I don't think it's a Marine for Enies Lobby either. But I think it's definitely better than it gets credit for. Um, I really enjoyed my reread. But what I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if this is really an analysis or a theory video, but just I noticed a lot of stuff on my reread that I hadn't really noticed before, especially with new information in the manga. Recent manga chapters, and I should probably issue a spoiler warning for those not caught up to 1018 in the manga, because there will be a bit of that coming later in the video. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of foreshadowing in Skypiea, and just in general, the entire concept of Skypiea is really just the story of One Piece as a whole, but in a much more condensed package. Or Skypiea and Jaya, the whole saga. And what I mean by that is that the basic premise of searching for a great treasure. One Piece, they're searching for the One Piece, and in this they're searching for El Dorado, or the Lost City of Gold or whatever. And they go on this great adventure. No one's sure if it exists, the treasure, or Sky Island itself. They even get laughed at for positing that this might even be a reality. Um, but they eventually, make their way up there. And I guess I should say that probably one of the amazing things about Skypiea as a whole, that it's very different from other One Piece arcs, is that it is a treasure hunt. And for a series about pirates, there are remarkably few arcs that center around hunting treasure. Other than maybe the Gaimon chapter, there are really no arcs that are just like completely treasure focused. Obviously, treasure may be involved. Obviously, treasure was involved in Nami's backstory and her whole thing there. Um, but other than that, like nothing. There's no arc that's like a big treasure hunt where the main objective is to get a treasure. And obviously, that's the point of the series as a whole. But on an arc to arc basis, we hardly ever see that. But in Skypiea, we do. And in general, the concept of Skypiea, or the big climax, is about fighting God and knocking them down a peg, which I feel like we can expect from the end of the series. I mean, obviously, the celestial dragons are in their own right be called gods, and eventually we can expect some sort of final war to involve destroying the celestial dragons, the world government in general. Much in the way Enel was defeated as the false god. And the whole after Skypiea, Upper Yard. The Skypiea composes of Upper Yard, Angel Island, and the hidden Shandian village. But in using the Arc Maxim, Enel destroys both Angel Island and the Shandian village, or I don't know if it has a name. I think it's just called like the Hidden Village or whatever. And afterwards, the Shandians and the Skypeans that were fighting for 400 years or whatever, have to live in harmony on Upper Yard. And I think again that's something we can expect from the end of One Piece. Thinking about, especially in regards to like fishmen, for example. The theory. There's a popular theory that the end of One Piece is going to involve the destruction of the Red Line, which is going to fulfill Madame Charlie's prophecy of the destruction of Fishman Island, because it's obviously located directly under. But in any case, we can at the very least expect something to happen to Fishman Island and for the fishermen to make their way up to the surface, fulfilling that whole dream. Because that is also, even if you weren't, expecting that to happen before, Jinbei's dream is effectively similar to like Otohime's, in which he wishes to, bring the fishermen up to the surface as well. So with the Straw Hat that has that dream, I think it's definitely going to happen. The fishermen are gonna, come up to the surface, and they're gonna live in harmony with the humans, and everybody's gonna live in harmony, and it's gonna be a big, happy ending, with the world government destroyed. Just those basic things, those basic premises are, similar to the series as a whole, but also with and here's the spoiler part, the sun god Nika. I think it's, with the knowledge we have of Nika now, it's heavily implied that maybe the entirety of Skypiea was written just to be foreshadowing for Nika. And what I mean by that is, during an interview, Oda revealed his 3 favorite panels that he'd ever drawn. The first was the whole picture of Wano, of the flower capital, because he'd been wanting to draw Wano for like ever. We know obviously it had been set up from at least a Thriller Bark. He probably had a rough idea about it much earlier. But yeah, he'd been wanting to draw Wano for a while, so getting to draw the flower capital, that was one of his favorite panels. The second was a scene in Subody, in which Robin just wipes off some of like the bubble soap on the ground onto Usopp's pant leg. I forget the exact reason. I think maybe it was just because he just loved like the characters he'd created, and like these little character interactions that they'd have, so much to the point where he's just like, that was like the moment he like realized how like proud of he was of his work, something like that. I don't know, I'm totally spitballing, that could be totally wrong. I forget exactly why he liked that. But the third panel that is his favorite is the party on Skypiea. Well, there's 2 parties. The one in particular that he's talking about is the one in the middle of the arc, when the Straw Hats regroup, and they're like, oh, we figured out that this is actually half of Jaya, and that the El Dorado should be up here in the Skull's right eye, and we're gonna go on a big, expedition tomorrow and get it. And they have a big party, the pre-bounty bash or whatever, something like that. That they have, the evening before they go out and go find the treasure, and all the Cloud Wolves join in. But something about this particular panel is that supposedly Oda says that this panel in particular was the whole reason he wanted to create the Skypiea arc, which is kind of big. For one thing, Skypiea was the longest arc at the time, longer than Alabaster, which is the former one. So like to go on that big of a detour for a single panel, that panel has to be a bit more important than a party, I feel like, right? Because there are parties at the end of every arc, pretty much. There's a party at the end of Skypiea, there's a party at the end of Enies Lobby. Any major arc features a big party at the end of it. So what about this particular party in Skypiea was so special? And now with the sun god Nika, we may have found that answer, because many people have pointed out that the silhouette of Luffy dancing in that party scene is remarkably similar to the silhouette of the sun god Nika. And that may just be a coincidence, surely in 1,000+ chapters of writing a manga, Oda just happens to make a silhouette of 2 characters similar. But it's not just one instance. That's the thing. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a second party at the end after Enel is defeated, where the Shandians and the Skypeans all join in the party. And there's another panel where Luffy is pretty much, the silhouette is almost exactly the same as the one pictured earlier. So he wanted to draw particular emphasis to this silhouette, which I think is greatly hinting on the part that he had this idea for the sun god Nika sent Skypiea, and that's the reason why Skypiea was formed in the first place. Not just because they wanted to draw this party scene, but also because this party scene actually had some pretty significant foreshadowing in it. But yeah, that's pretty crazy to think about. But also the way that Luffy defeats Enel is pretty evocative of a sun god. If you remember, he has that big like ball of lightning. I forget what it's called exactly. I think it was Mamaragon, or maybe that was a different one. I'm just going to call it Mamaragon because I think that's the one. But yeah, the big lightning ball that comes down and destroys Angel Island. That was a smaller one, and now makes another one that's bigger. That's going to wipe out the entirety of Upper Yard. And then Luffy launches himself in there with the big gold ball in his hand. Waves it around a bit, and magic happens and it destroys the big thing. But what's important about this is, well, two things. One is that the entirety of the Skypeans and the Shandians that are on like the little gondolas trying to escape, their roads, like their escape route was blocked off by lightning strike coming down and destroying the milky roads or whatever. So they're kind of just sitting ducks, and they're like, well, what else can we do but pray? So all of them get on their knees and just start praying to some sort of god to free them from Enel. And lo and behold, at that moment, Luffy destroys the big dark ball in the sky, and the light shines down. And the particular phrase that he says as he does this is "let the sun shine." And that to me is pretty strongly hinting at the fact that Luffy is supposed to be this sun god. Whether it's another title for Joy Boy or it's an entirely different entity altogether, there's some connection between Luffy and the sun god. It makes me think maybe Joy Boy. If Joy Boy and the sun god are different, maybe Luffy is got the inherited will of the sun god, but Joy Boy is like Momonosuke, because people have been thinking that Joy Boy's got to be either Momonosuke or Luffy. So maybe Joy Boy doesn't end up being Luffy and is instead Momonosuke, but then Luffy still has this title of sun god or whatever. And even in the flashback, the whole Nolan and Kalgara flashback, a sun god is specifically mentioned as one of the gods that they are sacrificing Kalgara's daughter to on that big altar or whatever. So like a lot of references to the sun god, or to some sort of sun deity in this arc, which with the knowledge we have now is kind of telling. And if this genuinely is an entire arc that was formulated just to be foreshadowing for this particular incident, 700 plus chapters down the line, round of applause to Oda if that's the case, because that's just crazy. But other stuff I liked about the arc, Wiper was a much cooler character than I remember. Just because Skypiea is such a isolated arc, obviously One Piece characters have a tendency of making the rounds and coming back into importance later down the line. And that's one of the reasons why Oda's world building is so praised. Skypiea is one of the few arcs in which that just doesn't really happen. With the exception of Gedatsu and Enel that got like a cover story. I don't really think any of the characters present in Skypiea actually became important again. Obviously, Bellamy came back during Dressrosa. That was part of Jaya, so whether you count that or not is up to you. But yeah, it's very isolated. So, some of the characters, due to them not coming back, aren't quite as memorable. But man, Wiper's pretty cool. Wiper is pretty much Trafalgar Law, but for Skypiea. And what I mean by that is that he's like a powerful ally, like very powerful, like pretty much almost on par with Luffy, powerful. That rolls up, has a grudge against the main villain, and then almost defeats the main villain on his own. What I mean by that is, Law used his Gamma Knife, I think it was, um, gets the move off on Doflamingo, and it pretty much almost defeats him right there. The only thing that saves Doflamingo is his string ability, because he's able to repair his organs. Same thing with Wiper. Wiper gets a reject dial off on Enel. Enel looks like he's down for the count. And Enel's only able to get revived because of his ability. He's able to massage his heart with his lightning powers. So, I mean, that's good, because especially since I wouldn't really be making this parallel if Law wasn't such a popular character. But Wiper pretty much fulfills a very similar role to Law does in Dressrosa, which I think is interesting, because Wiper is very rarely cited as like a very popular character, whereas Law is. And obviously we've had a lot more development for Law between Punk Hazard and Zoe and Wano and whatnot, but still, Wiper is pretty cool. Just yeah, he's just cool. That's all I really have to say on him. And he's initially introduced as very hard, violent, and maybe ignorant, but we come to learn that this whole reason he's so fervent on getting this bell, getting the Shandorn's land back, and ringing the bell, is because he was he had a childlike wonder and childlike amazement with the story of Calgara and Noland. In a remarkably similar way that Montblanc cricket had it, and Luffy is obviously enamored by the story, and wants to go up to Skypiea and ring the gold bell and whatnot. So yeah, like, he becomes a very likable character, and is probably one of the coolest allies that the Straw Hats have ever gotten. Allies in air quotes, because for the most of the part, they were, he was kind of attacking the Straw Hats, but whatever. Yeah, I enjoyed Wiper a lot. I think he was probably one of the highlights of that arc for me. But also Enel. Enel was very cool too. Enel just like raining down that those panels where it's just upper yard, and we just see the lightning just barraging it. That's very cool. Everything involved with Enel and his powers are just very visually cool. Just no complaints there. And just the sense of adventure, the whole setup with cricket, and the Monkey Brigade or whatever, and just it really is an arc that centers heavily around dreams, and being a big dreamer and whatnot. And it's very refreshing, because these are kind of the ideas that are constant in One Piece as a whole, and makes One Piece very memorable, and are probably the reason a lot of people like One Piece. But they're so present, and obviously present in Skypiea, that I can't help but be thoroughly enjoying the entire experience. And they use that, and Oda uses that medium to have an introduction to Blackbeard, the dreams, a man's dreams never end scene. And Blackbeard's introduction is very good also, in my opinion, for someone who is going to be, the major, assumedly going to be the final antagonist. Portraying him as, equal but opposite to Luffy. Maybe not equal, but they're polar opposites. With the whole the scene in the bar where they have opposite tastes on the grog and the cherry pie. It's a very simple but effective way to introduce the main antagonist. And when we've heard about Blackbeard since Drum Kingdom, but we meet him in Jaya, but we don't actually learn who he is until the very end of Jaya. So that's kind of interesting. We have these two big figures, but we don't actually get to make the connection until the end, I guess. I don't know. I just really like Blackbeard's introduction, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. But yeah, Skypiea, pretty good. And I already touched on the Nolan and Calgara flashback, but it's it's not memorable, simply because it's the only flashback that is just no character because the what I'm trying to say is like a flashback usually includes a character that's alive in the modern day that we get to like sympathize with and experience it. Like obviously with the Straw Hats, when we get Robin's flashback, for example, it's Robin's flashback. The only other thing that comes close is probably the Odin flashback, because obviously the center character of that is Odin, who is a character that is now dead. But due to the fact that the Scabbards are also present in that flashback, we still get that sense of sympathy through them. But the reason that the Nolan and Colgrove flashback, at least for me, probably wasn't quite as memorable is because no characters in that flashback are alive today. It happened 400 years ago. But it really is a very good flashback. I I don't know. It's very rare that we get like context from that long ago in One Piece, because the history of One Piece is mostly the stuff where the biggest questions in the series come from the history of One Piece. Obviously, the Void Century, the God Valley incident, all that stuff. So we very rarely get a peek into the One Piece world that long ago, and in that much detail. So it's a very incredible experience to go on, even if it's maybe not as memorable in the grand scheme of the story. But yeah. But with that being said, I don't really think I have anything else to say. Just a lot of praise for Skypiea, for really blowing my socks off on this reread, and also for possibly having some huge foreshadowing that all of us were oblivious to, for well over half the series runtime. But with that being said, I will see you guys later.